Hey guys, Darren Murphy here, aka More Precious Dust. Thanks for tuning in once again. This is my second video on my small series on basic music theory for producers. If you haven't watched the first one on 12 tone equal temperament, please go do that. So now that we know why we have the 12 notes in Western music that we do and why we call them what we call them, let's get into some basic scales and chords. Let's kick it. I'm going to run through the two most basic scales, the major scale and the minor scale, very quickly because they are the basis of most of the music you've ever heard in your life if you live in the quote-unquote Western world. And if you're watching this video, you probably already know them, but I do want to go over them because though you may know how to play these scales because your music teacher or your older brother or your grandmother's neighbor showed you the right notes on your instrument and you just blindly memorize them, you may not know how they are defined within the intervals I taught you last video. So let's bring up our handy dandy interval chart from last time. The major scale is super simple to identify. It is simply made up of the tonic note followed by all the natural or major notes, which includes the perfect fourth and perfect fifth in our 12-tone equal temperament system. I talked briefly about natural versus major in the last video, about how I like using the terms natural and flat more than the terms major and minor, but I made sure my chart said both because in this case, calling them major makes sense because these are all the notes that make up the major scale. Simple as that. So 7 notes, all of the major or perfect notes. It's the 1, the 2, the 3, the 4, the 5, the 6, the 7 before you return back to the octave. Flat notes, or that pesky diminished fifth note, need not apply to the major scale. Move on. Nothing to see here. But now, just because simply playing all of the notes considered major will give you your major scale, that doesn't mean that playing all the minor notes shown here will get you your minor scale. So, see how that's dangerous? Let's change colors to signify our minor scale. Now, the minor scale is a major scale with 3 of its natural notes stepped down a semitone to its flattened form. The 3rd, the 6th, and the 7th. And this is just something that you need to memorize at this point. You can get to this definition of the minor scale by using modes, which is a more advanced topic we will most likely talk about in a future video. But the minor scale is so ubiquitous in Western music that you shouldn't wait for that advanced topic to learn it. Just remember, flatten the 3rd, 6th, and the 7th. And boom, you've got that scale that swooned you through all of your antsy, emo, acne-riddled times of your preteens and teens. And your 20s, and your early 30s. So practice these scales. There are a lot of finger exercises that derive from these scales. How to practice them is not within the scope of this video. There's obviously plenty of information out there on YouTube about that. So let's go over some basic chords. Now, I'm going to take a moment to sound a bit snobbish right here, but in my mind, the definition of a chord is 3 notes played at once, not 2. If you play 2 notes at once, that is an interval, not a chord. But if you want to consider an interval or playing 2 notes at once a chord, you can. I'm not going to despise you that much. So just like we have our 2 basic scales, the major and minor scale, we have our 2 basic chords, the major and minor chord. And they're both 3-note chords, which is what we call a triad. And triads are the only chords that we are going to be dealing with in this video. I'm going to be showing you your first major triad in the scale of C because it is the easiest scale to learn. It is all the white keys and no black keys. And you'll see that this will prove useful when you need to remind yourself of the chord shapes I'm going to show you. So the C major triad, once again, will consist of 3 notes. It's tonic C, it's natural / major third, which is 4 half steps or semitones up. Remember from the tonic, it's flat 2, natural 2, flat 3, natural 3. So 4 half steps. And in this case, that's an E. And the last note in the C major chord is its perfect fifth, which is 3 half steps up from there. From the natural third, it's the perfect fourth, the diminished fifth, and then the perfect fifth. And in this case, that's a G. And as you can see, with that major third in there and that perfect fifth, you'll have some nice happy-go-lucky consonants going on. So what did we just do right there? Started on the tonic, then we went up 4 half steps, and then we went up 3 half steps. So going up 4 half steps from the tonic will get you to your major third. So that, of course, is a major third interval. But going up 3 half steps after that to get you to your perfect fifth, well, what is that? That's actually a minor third interval. 3 half steps up from the tonic will get you to your minor third, so 3 half steps is a minor third interval. But it doesn't mean it always has to start on the tonic. The definition of the term interval simply means the distance between two notes. Just because we land on the perfect fifth, just because we happen to be landing on the perfect fifth right now, does not make that a perfect fifth interval by any means. It's the relationship between the note that came before it, which was the major third, 3 half steps down. So, minor third. 3 half steps or 3 semitones will always define a minor interval no matter where you start. And the reason why I showed you your first major triad in the key of C is because if you ever forget that a major triad is made up of a major third interval followed by a minor third interval, or that a major third consists of 4 half steps and a minor third consists of 3, well, just place your first finger on C, skip one white key, play the next, skip one white key, play the next. That way you can remind yourself when you count the black keys too, oh yeah, 4 half steps followed by 3 half steps. Got it. Since the key of C major only consists of white keys once again, it is a good reference to go back to define the intervals that make up the basic triads. So isn't that interesting? A major triad consists of a major third interval followed by a minor third interval. A minor third interval within a major triad might be a bit confusing, which is why I've said that I like using the terms natural and flat versus major and minor. But to be honest with you, more often than not, you're going to start hearing people say major and minor. So I'll probably start falling into that as well. Just beware. So a major triad is a major third interval followed by a minor third interval. And I'm just going to drop the word interval right now because it's getting redundant. Whenever you put that formula together, major third followed by a minor third, you will get a major triad, no matter what, no matter where you play it, no matter what your tonic is. If you want to play a D major triad, for example, you start on D, go up 4 half steps to your natural/major third, which gets you to F sharp, a black key, and 3 more half steps to your perfect fifth, A. So wait, we're hitting a black key in a major chord? So quickly here you need to realize that black keys and white keys on a piano are inherently the same way every fret on a guitar is inherently the same. Once again, it is simply the major third followed by the minor third key pattern that defines a major triad. And if that pattern lands you on a black key, then so be it. The reason we have 2 different colored and sized keys on a piano simply so the human mind can grasp its bearing of where it is on the entire keyboard. Imagine if a piano had nothing but white keys, how much more difficult it would be to play, how much more difficult it would be to know where the octave started and ended or what key you're in. The only reference you'd have is the beginning and end of the keyboard or piano, which is, of course, super impractical. When you're playing triads, you will find ones that have just 1 white key and 2 black keys, and you'll find some that have all black keys. It just depends on where you're starting, where your tonic is. Knowing all that, the minor triad is going to be much quicker. I'll show you that in the key of A because the key of A minor also contains the white notes on a piano only. All major keys have a relative minor key, which will contain all of the exact same 7 notes, but the tonic is in a different spot. So thus the relative minor of C is A. A is the 1 now, not C. I'll explain relative minor and major keys in more detail in a bit. To play a minor triad, you simply reverse the simple formula of a major third interval followed by a minor third interval. Play your tonic A, go up a minor third now, 3 half steps, which is C in this case, followed by a major third, 4 half steps, which gets you to E. You get that nice dark sound to go with your chart Black and Soul, and you can see why I've chosen this key to show you your first minor triad because it follows the same visual formula as a major triad in the key of C, i.e., play your tonic A, skip a white, play a white, skip a white, play a white. So go back to A to remember that a minor triad is a minor third followed by a major third when you count the black notes in between two. Now you can take this minor chord formula anywhere and play a minor triad in any key. Once again, just like the major triad, depending on where you start, you may have black keys appear in minor triads. So inherently, the only difference between a major triad and a minor triad is that third. They both contain the tonic and the perfect fifth, but a major triad contains the major third and a minor triad contains the minor third. So let's use that thought to play a C minor triad instead of a C major triad. Here's your C major triad. So I'll just take that middle note and flatten it 1/2 step down, which just happens to be a black key, D sharp or E flat. Here's your C minor chord. Let's do the opposite. Let's play an A major triad instead of an A minor. Here's your A minor chord. Now let's take that middle note and raise it a 1/2 step from the minor third to the major third this time, which once again happens to be a black key, C sharp or D flat in this case. There is your A major chord. Once again, just remember that a major triad is always a major third, 4/2 steps, followed by a minor third, 3/2 steps, and a minor triad is the opposite, a minor third followed by a major third. Always, 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 always. But let's go back to the C major scale. I'll display right now the power of the scale and why it is always a good reference to go back to when figuring out what chords are in a key. Just like we have 7 notes in our major and minor scales, we have 7 chords in each scale, each starting on one of the 7 notes within the scale. And figuring those 7 chords out in C major is extremely easy. Just use that same finger formation of playing a white key, skipping a white key, playing a white key, skipping a white key, playing a white key, and just carry that up the keyboard. And if you do that, you will hit all of the triads that are in the C major scale until you get back to a C major triad at the top. But I'm sure you noticed that even though we kept the same finger formation, all of those triads did not sound exactly the same. And that will quickly tell you that the C major scale is not made up of all major chords. Some minor chords will come up in there too. And that last chord, the 7th chord, in this case the B chord, before getting back to the tonic, is actually one triad we haven't talked about yet. I'll get to that one in a second. So the reason the chords are sounding different is because when you bring this finger formation up the keyboard, the amount of black keys that are in between the white keys you're playing are changing, and thus the 2 intervals that make up each chord are shifting as you play. So let's break down what triads are in a major scale. These 7 triads that I'm about to run through, in the order that they are in, will always be the same in every major scale, regardless of where you start, regardless of what key you are in. Once again, we are doing it in C major because it is simply the easiest to visualize. The first triad we know is C major, but what is the second triad? Well, that first note is a D. Okay, so this is a D chord, makes sense. But if we count all of the notes in between our fingers, we see that we count 3/2 steps followed by 4/2 steps, and we know that means it is a minor third followed by a major third. So this is a D minor triad based on the formula we learned earlier. And of course, you can instinctively tell that this is a minor chord, not a major chord, just based on how it sounds. So yeah, the second triad in C major is D minor, and thus every 2 chord in a major scale will always be a minor chord. That is a fact. It's called music theory, but just like in science, to have a theory in music, you have to start with some facts. And that's a fact. Let's analyze the third triad in C major. Our first note is an E in this same finger formation, so this is an E chord. And if we count the intervals that make up the triad, we find once again we are playing a minor third followed by a major third. So the 3 chord in any major scale is also a minor chord. Isn't that interesting? We're in a major scale, and yet the next two chords in that scale are both minor. Look at that. So you get the idea. I'm going to run through the rest a bit quicker. Fourth triad, if you count the notes, you'll see that we're back to a major triad. The fifth chord, you will see, is also a major triad. And those two triads start on the perfect fourth and the perfect fifth, which I talked about in my last video. Good way to remember. The sixth triad is back to a minor triad. You'll recognize the A minor chord there, which you shouldn't be surprised showed up since A minor is the relative minor of C major. Then we get to the seventh and last triad in the scale. Whoa, that sounds a bit different than the rest. Let's count the keys to see what two intervals make up this chord. 3 half steps followed by another 3 half steps. All right, that is not a formula we have been over yet. So what is this? Well, let's look at the interval not between our first and second finger, but between our first and third finger. We have 6 half steps there in between. And if you watch my last video, you'll know that this is a tritone, the most dissonant sounding interval we have available to us in our 12-tone equal temperament system. So music theory calls a minor third followed by another minor third a diminished triad. In the key of C major, it is the B diminished triad. So in my last video, I said that this interval can be quite useful regardless of the fact that in a vacuum by itself, it can sound quite ugly. But what if we played this diminished chord followed by the tonic? That actually sounds quite satisfying. That is some tension followed by a release right there. And that is another inherent music lesson you should take to heart if you want to write engaging music. You could stick with the tension dissonant side of things all the time or the release consonant side of things all the time, but neither is going to give you engaging music. The former will just be very difficult to listen to, and the latter will just bore you to tears as if your toddler is playing Baby Shark over and over and over again. Now, I don't mean to offend. I think Baby Shark can slap in the right context, but you get what I mean. So let's play a simple 4-chord progression that includes that 7th chord, that diminished chord. Now that sounds familiar. You've heard that before. And let me tell you, there are plenty of popular songs that you've heard in your lifetime that contains a diminished chord, that contains that tension followed by a release that you want in your music. So to recap, here are all 7 of the triad chords you will find in the major scale. And once again, I'm specifically showing you the chords in C major. I feel like a broken record when I say that, because if you ever forget the order of major versus minor chords, like the fact that the 6th chord is a minor triad, while the 4th chord is a major triad, etc., just go back to C, put down your 3-finger formation, and just carry that pattern up the keyboard. Now, here's where I can finally display why I'd rather use the terms natural and flat versus minor and major to describe the individual notes. I just mentioned the 6th chord, which is a minor chord in a major key. This is a natural 6, but its chord is minor. The flat 6th note, in this case G sharp or A flat, can have a major chord or a minor chord built off of it as well. So you would call that a flat 6 major chord or flat 6 minor chord. You wouldn't say minor 6 major chord. No one says that. So that is why I like using natural and flats from the start. So let's clean all of that up to get to the final topic, which is going to be the triads that exist in the minor scale. This will be real quick. We'll do it in A minor, just like when we learned our minor triad. And all you simply have to do is treat A as the 1, as the tonic, instead of C. So let's do that. There, A is our 1. And you see that it remains a minor chord like it was in C major. So let's just take these chords and repeat them over here. There are your minor triads in A minor. And there's the order of minor versus major versus diminished chord in any minor key. It is as simple as starting in a different spot, but inherently nothing changes. It is a bit interesting that the 2 chord is now the diminished chord in minor scales, but so be it. I did mention relative keys a couple of times earlier in the video, that the relative minor key of C major is A minor because they both contain all the same 7 notes. Now, there are 2 ways to remember where a major key's relative minor key is. You can either remember that the 6th chord in your major scale will become the 1 chord in your minor scale. Recall that A minor was the 6th chord in C major. Or you can simply count down a minor third from your major 1 tonic. So there you have it, guys. I hope you have a better understanding of basic scales and chords. I'm going to do one more video in my short series on the basics of music theory for producers before we get into the Ableton stuff. In that video, we're going to take our chords one step further into jazz territory, 7th chords. It's a very simple way to make your chords sound more interesting. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Darren, aka More Precious Dust. Please tickle that like and subscribe button, and I will see you next time.